Right, back live tonight, John in Focus. Many South Africans on social media have expressed support for the steps that the country has taken against Israel. This is what some of those on social media had to say. This is Nelson Mandela Foundation extends support to the South African legal team as they appear before the International Court of Justice today, wishing them strength and success in their pursuit for truth, justice and peace. Nelson Mandela's legacy lives on. Thank you, South Africa. You make Nelson Mandela proud. And this one from Francesca saying 11 January 2023, the International Court of Justice, The Hague, watching African women and men fighting to save humanity and the international legal system against the ruthless attacks supported, enabled by most of the West, will remain one of the defining images of our time. This will make history whatever happens. Right, some of those views there. News 24 journalist Qaanitah Hunter is at The Hague and covering this case. Qaanitah, good evening. Good to have you, and thank you for coming on this evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Yourself, you just tweeted moments ago, this was a masterstroke potential to shift history in terms of the first day of hearings and the presentation by South Africa. What could have stood out for you to that degree?
I think that South Africa appeared before the ICJ today, equipped with a cogent case rooted in facts and supported by international law. It was a well-articulated case presented by the best legal mind South Africa has, as it built the case that Israel was guilty of genocide and made a plea to the court for a provisional measure, which is to order Israel to stop its military invasion of Gaza and to allow humanitarian aid to reach its besieged population. Now, what was really outstanding about South Africa's submission is how it broke up its argument, with Advocate Adila Hassan talking to the court about the genocidal acts by Israel in Gaza. And then Advocate Tembea Nguetobi really went, out of his way to explain to the court how the utterances of top Israeli leaders and military commanders have led to genocidal actions by the Israeli soldiers. He sought to prove that there is genocidal intent that is taking place in Gaza. The court also heard that, that there's jurisdiction. And what was interesting was that South Africa sought to preempt Israel's arguments before the court by saying that no attack on a state's territory, no matter how atrocious, can justify genocide. And that, I think, sort of underpinned South Africa's case that Israel has gone too far when it comes to self-defense. Let's
talk about that presentation by Advocate Hassan a little bit. I mean, her pillars really being the heaviest bombing campaign, the death and starvation by blocking humanitarian aid, making it also impossible to distribute because of the destruction of the road infrastructure. Take us through the evidence that she presented to support some of the pillars of her argument.
Advocate Hassan came empowered with a map of Gaza showing that, particularly South Africa's assertion that this conflict did not start on October 7, spoke about how Israel basically controls all of Gaza, and that, the movement, free flow movement, the airspace, the sea, it's all controlled by Gaza. Presented to the court some pictures of the atrocities in the Gaza Strip since October 7, and also detailed reports how women are unable to give birth, how hospitals have been completely bombed, and that evidence, she located it as evidence that this is targeted genocide by Israel and not simply a collateral damage as Israel has presented to the world.
Talk to us about what has been happening around, of course, The Hague and your observations, linking it, for me, as opposed to that tweet by Francesca Albanese that I just read moments ago, around the West and the supporters of the West being enablers of their attack, a ruthless attack on the international legal system. The contingent of media, many are noting that even though there is a huge contingent, but there is a loud absence of key media representing the West. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that, firstly, the International Relations and Cooperation Director General Dango said that South Africa's case is one to end institutionalized impunity supported by many Western governments. This case has huge ramifications geopolitically. The United States has repeatedly said that it believes that South Africa's case is unfounded and meritless. If you're talking about coverage of this case, I think it's quite important to note that there's a huge media contingent, but as you've mentioned, there has been absence of some big international media houses present here at The Hague. Regardless, I think that the ramifications of such a case is massive, and I think that the consequence will be felt for many years to come. And with many commentators, people present at the court saying that it is, you could feel the history that was being made today in the Peace Palace here in The Hague.
How much of it, though, would fall maybe more on the international court of public opinion more than it would actually fall in the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice?
I think South Africa's application does influence public, or seeks to influence public opinion in how it set out its case. Taking the court, into the history of Palestine, going all the way back to the Nakba, talking about the repeated military invasions by Israel, and asserting that this conflict did not start on October 7. So South Africa's case has definitely propelled international solidarity. It forced the issue of this conflict into the public realm. But at the same time, it seeks to do something very specific, and that is to get an injunction from the International Court of Justice to stop the military invasion by Israel in Gaza. Because, as we know, that efforts to enforce a ceasefire at the United Nations Security Council failed. So if the court rules in South Africa's favor, this judgment will then be sent to the United Nations. And countries who are signatories to the Genocide Convention will have to abide and not have the choice of ignoring the court hearing. So it shifts the narrative and it changes the discourse from Israel saying that it's acting in retaliation to a court of the United Nations, a top organ of the United Nations, saying that Israel is suspected of genocide pending a final verdict in time to come. Yeah,
some commentators have been going further to say if, for example, South Africa is unsuccessful in its effort in the provisions and the measures that they are requesting, it could certainly set a new standard for what self-defense is, especially when it comes to wars that are being fought around the world.
Yeah, but that was addressed by Advocate Vaughan Lowe in his submissions to the court, saying that Israel is not a state party and that Gaza is under the full control of Israel. And so what South Africa sought to do today in the court was to respond to that assertion that all Israel is doing is defending itself, with Advocate Lowe telling the court that Israel cannot be party to this case because it is not a state, and despite the atrocities which South Africa has repeatedly condemned, it cannot be justified that more than 23,000 people were killed. I just want to, go to the comments made by Advocate Lowe. He says, Israel may say that it will comply, but in previous cases the court has held that basically it has ignored it. And also, the court heard a very important point made by Advocate Lowe that Israel basically it doesn't see anything wrong with destroying an entire people, even as it seeks, even if it says it seeks to destroy Hamas. And so tomorrow I think the court is going to hear a lot about proportionality, about the October 7 attacks and how that has guided or is at the center of Israel's military invasion of Gaza, and their repeated claim, obviously, that Hamas has embedded itself within the civilian population of Gaza. That has long been Israel's response, and we're likely to see that argued in court tomorrow. At the same time, top Israeli officials and politicians have dismissed South Africa's case today, saying that it's anti-Semitic.
News 24 journalist Qaanitah Hunter live for us at The Hague. There she's covering the case and the proceedings there.